Welcome to part 3 of the corruption of Nevada judicial system and the abuse I've suffered after the loss of my son. And if you guys are just tuning in, a short summary is after the loss of my son, I was defrauded and a group of people committed mortgage fraud. And because of the group of people committing mortgage fraud, I've been put through 4 years of litigation over this divorce as they try to argue it as community property. And I've now been a victim of the corruption of the police department, corruption of the lawyers, judges, and now being attacked openly by over 15 judges that now attack me and my work because I want justice and I'm demanding that my constitutional rights be upheld. But when we have a court system that has no checks and balances, that can pick the judges and switch the judges, and when you get to the Supreme Court level, they're able to make you file everything by paper, so if they choose not to file it, there is no record of it. All of these different things set up in the court system foster corruption, and to give one person so much power over other people's lives, it opens up the door for corruption. And that's what I've been suffering through for 4 years. For 4 years, I have not had any access to any of the funds my son raised. For 4 years, I've been forced to be called the name of my abuser. For 4 years, I have not been able to remarry or buy my own home. For 4 years, I have not been able to seek IVF treatment to have another child, because as a married woman, I have none of those rights. And without a decree of divorce that's stamped or annulment, I can't change my name back. I can't purchase a home. I can't adopt a child. And to be put through so much pain and hurt so that they can conceal a crime that's been committed against me, it's inhumane. And it violates all my constitutional rights. It violates my rights as a victim of a crime. It violates my rights to just have access to normal liberties. And I'm hoping that me sharing my story with everybody encourages somebody to stand up and use their voice or their platform to bring change to everybody who's suffering through racism in the court systems, social injustice in the court systems, inequality in the court systems. And even when you are honest and follow the process in the United States court system, it doesn't mean you're ever going to get justice. And asking for your constitutional rights to be upheld can then destroy your life, because the agenda of different judges and government workers is to conceal it. And if you get in the way of that agenda, then you are now the target. So I'm hoping that sharing my story ends some part of the corruption or opens up the lights to different things that are happening. And I'm starting part 3 today with the trial. So in June of 2018, everyone knew that mortgage fraud had occurred, simply by Nikki Bott, who still has not been arrested. She has never seen a day in the police station, who acted as the notary and the escrow agent and forged my name. I had proven all of this. I then proved that Bobby, Antee, and Linda Naw then tried to conspire with her counsel, my counsel, and their counsel to conceal this. And everybody thought that I was in so much pain and I was so spread so thin that I would never be able to figure all this out. And this is how I figured it out. So in February 2020, after waiting 2 years to get a trial, to get a divorce, we go to this divorce hearing. And the night prior, we go prepare at Jennings and Fulton. Adam Fulton, Logan Wilson, and Jared Jennings are all there. And we talk about the trial, and they tell me, before I leave, this is a closed trial, so make sure that You don't have anybody there. You can, you at the time I had a boyfriend. They said you could bring your boyfriend, and but you can't bring anybody else. It's a closed trial. And on the pretrial memorandum we were going over the night prior, they have my witnesses on there. They have all my evidence on there. They have the evidence from 2018. So it's a simple case. And, I'm excited, and I'm telling my attorney, I hope you're ready to go in there. I'm finally going to get justice. And he's really quiet. And I don't realize at the time why. Because I was so elated to get to this point, that it was finally happening, that nobody was changing my court date. Because for the last 2.5 years, I was living in a house thinking every 3-4 months that I had to leave. So I'm paying for this house. My stuff is in storage because I keep thinking that we're going to end this at some point and we'll get to leave. And it never happens. So finally we get to this court date, and the trial is on February 7th, 2020. And we start, and I get there, and Bobby has all his friends, all his family, Linda, all her friends, and they're all flooding this side of the courtroom. And on my side, I have, my boyfriend at the time and my assistant. And these were my witnesses, which my mom was also, I told him, a witness. Aiden's sister, I also said, would be a witness. So there was plenty of people to attest to what had happened prior to the marriage and what was said, and, what the truth was. So we get to trial, and Linda Naw testifies first. Now, anybody that knows anything about court knows Linda Naw is being accused of the same crime as Bobby. So they can't conspire together and testify for each other. And they can't use the same attorney. But they did. So they go to this trial. My attorneys are there. And Linda Naw then testifies the whole first day. We're sitting there for almost 8 hours, where this lady lies about everything. She perjures herself and says she has gift letters that she doesn't have. She then calls me a liar and an opportunist. She then admits to being the liaison between us and the lender, which is outside of her duties. She's not supposed to collect the gift letters. So everything she had been doing up into this point was illegal. And she then sits on the stand and lies and says, I knew the whole time, and that I was on board, and then, I changed my mind. So then I'm the next person to go on the stand. And they spend the next 6-7 hours straight questioning me. And all the questions are about my work, about my foundation, about my signature, anything they could come up with, but never once acknowledge that the notary was also the escrow agent, and my name was forged. So therefore it was not a valid document. The forged quitclaim was invalid. So I was the party that was affected. Bobby had lied about it and conspired with the realtor. So I was entitled to the house, the proceeds of the house. So there should have never been a trial, because they had this information for 2 years. But the whole point of the trial was to try to let me tell my story, but then tell me later, after the trial, that the judge didn't believe anything I said. So after testifying for hours, Bobby goes up there for about 30 minutes. My lawyers don't ask him anything. And then his lawyer goes up and talks. Then they ask for closing arguments, and the trial's over. And I'm looking at them like, you gotta be joking. Are you guys kidding me right now? And they then stipulate, my attorneys and Shumway Van, this is right in the tapes that are on YouTube of the trial, stipulate to remove the plaintiff's Exhibit 6. My Exhibit 6 was the legal separation documents and the separate maintenance documents that were uploaded 2 years ago that had the proof of notary fraud and mortgage fraud. So they remove that out of evidence, and they then say that Rena Hughes is going to go back in chambers, and in 2 weeks we'll have a ruling. So I'm sitting waiting and waiting and waiting for this ruling to come out. And I'm just like, I'm going to get my name back. I'm going to be able to move on with my life. I'm just ready for this to be over. But in the meantime, while we're waiting for this to happen, we still have this case with the title company filed by Jennings and Fulton. And then we still have this defamation case with the realtor. And with the realtor, she files this defamation case under Linda Naw Real Estate. Linda Naw Real Estate had absolutely nothing to do with our transaction. She was working for ERA Brokers. She filed that defamation lawsuit to try to get blame away from her broker. And I told this to Arron Fulton when I retained him. So he could have easily dismissed the case based on the fact that Linda Naw Real Estate had nothing to do with our transaction, and that she did utter a forged deed to be true for 2 years. So she had no case. But instead, they tried to help her build a case and continue to put me through the stress of endless questions and litigation over that. And then right after the divorce hearing was over and we were waiting for the judge, they then tell me that I can no longer afford them to help with Linda, so I'm on my own with Linda. So now we have the title company, and they're telling me, well, it was negligence, but you're going to get $85,000 back from the divorce. So then you can't double dip. You can't have claims against Bobby and then have the same claims against the title company. So he basically just kept dancing around it and trying to convince me that I couldn't get anything, and that the $5,000 that he has settled with them with was what I was entitled to. So at that point, I'm infuriated with my lawyers because I'm like, I paid you more than $5,000 for the divorce that I shouldn't have had to go through. I paid you a $5,000 retainer for the Linda Naw case when she did commit fraud and she was part of forgery and mortgage fraud. And now you guys are dumping me right before the Linda Naw, right in the middle of the Linda Naw case. And then you're forcing me into a settlement with the title company for $5,000. And I'm still waiting on Rena Hughes to make a ruling. So in this time, I'm still filing my own reports with the Secretary of State, with the bond company. So I asked my lawyers, do they know where the notary bond was? They told me they had no idea how to find it. So I find it myself. And I happened to find it the day before I was going to just sign the agreement and take the $5,000. So I find this bond and I file a report with Liberty Mutual because she notarized it herself. This is simple. And Liberty Mutual opens up an investigation and the bond payout should be $10,000. So I'm waiting and waiting. I'm telling my attorneys, this is great. I'm copying them on the emails, which I did all 2 years. I copied them on emails to the police department, on Secretary of State, Business of Industry, Galvar. Everybody I was reporting this to, I copied my attorneys. And not one time did they ever advocate for anybody to do the right thing. And honestly, they played interference. I feel like every time I told them I was going to do something, they called somebody and was like, oh, she's coming in, make sure you grab this. And that's how they defended me for 2 years. So after we're at this divorce hearing, and one of the questions Bobby's lawyer asked me was, if they forged your name, why don't you have a letter from an expert? And that is when the lights turned on in my head. And I realized, I looked at my counsel, and Jared Jennings was my lawyer. He was looking down. And I knew at that point, something wasn't right. Something was very, very wrong. So after being put through 2 days of a trial where I was made fun of, where they mocked the death of my son, where they picked apart my work, where I was degraded and treated like I was the criminal, why they walked Bobby to his car, why Rena Hughes let Linda Naw curse and call me names, why she sat and let Bobby Antee perjure himself on the stand, why she typed her own court reporter notes. When there was a court reporter sitting right there, you could see on the tapes her getting up and coming over to Rena Hughes, but Rena Hughes was typing the court reporter notes herself, which is why our transcripts don't match the tapes. So After this trial is over, I find the bond and I'm waiting and waiting. And my attorney's he's calling my house, trying to force me into this $5,000 settlement. And I'm telling him, like, no, I'm going to get the bond. That's $10,000. And then I'll take the $5,000 after I get the $10,000. So I told him, take the bond out of it, out of the settlement. And he refused. So for a lawyer to even tell his client to take a $5,000 settlement on a case where mortgage fraud penalties are over $50,000, forgery is $10,000 alone. So that's legal malpractice in itself. So after I find the bond and I refuse to do the settlement, and I'm still waiting for Rena Hughes, the trial was, last day of trial was February 12th. Rena Hughes didn't come out with the ruling until May 22nd, and it was the opinion of the court. In the opinion of the court, she basically bashes me and makes up all these lies about I was at the title company, I had IRS tax debt, I committed fraud by using his bank card, I wasn't credible in the damages that I claimed, just completely made up a ruling. And then says the title company did nothing, even though nobody from the title company ever showed up at the trial. There was no jury at my trial, and none of my witnesses were able to take the stand. The only witness that was at this trial was Linda Naw, the realtor, an incredible witness who should have never been allowed to testify because they were clearly conspiring together. So she comes out with this ruling, and she basically says, I'm not credible, and that Bobby is going to get half of the equity to pay him back for, I was responsible for his child support. I never even met his kids. I never met his baby mama, none of it. So then I was responsible for repaying all the debts of the house, even though he never paid any of the debts from the house. So what was I repaying him? And then she makes up a $10,000 IRS debt. That wasn't true. So at this point, I'm like, I go to my lawyers and I'm like, she faked the whole ruling. And I start looking up this judge. And I'm like, look, she's done this before. And it's another black woman that she's done this to. So this is a pattern of racism from this judge. She ignored all my evidence. At the time, I had no idea that they had taken all my evidence out of the trial binder. But it wouldn't have mattered because the judge was already conspiring with them. So they take my evidence out and she rules, and they call me in the office and they're like, look, she didn't believe you. You need to just sign the settlement. There's nothing else we could do. There's nothing else we could tell her. It's over. And we need to save you from the Linda Naw case and the mortgage company case, because now you're in a horrible spot because the family court judge ruled that you weren't credible and that it's not community property. No one has to pay you back for the student loans or any of the debts paid off. He gets everything in half more. And I'm telling him, this is insane. And I'm not accepting it. So they didn't give me an option of appeal. They didn't do a motion for reconsideration. They didn't present any evidence. They did nothing. They then filed into the title company case and said she already settled and tried to get them to rule on preclusion that I had already settled. So I then start filing into my own cases. And I then realized at the meeting with those attorneys, looking across the table at Logan, he had the pretrial memorandum on the table, but it was not the pretrial memorandum that I had looked at before trial. It was a different one that only had 5 exhibits. So they did not submit any of the medical bills. They didn't submit any of the text messages of abuse. They didn't submit the information that the escrow agent forged my name. They submitted none of it. So I then knew that something was wrong with my attorneys. And then Adam Fulton then tells me the same day, you know, if you don't sign this settlement paper with the title company, I'm going to tell them that you said you would sign it. I'm not going to lie for you. And I told him, I'm not going to sign it because I didn't accept the settlement. But the fact that he threatened me as his client was another red flag for me. And I knew to get out of there. So that day, I left the office. I asked them to withdraw from all my cases. This is May. And on May 22nd. And then on May 30th, I get a letter from the expert. I go find one, and I stayed a step ahead of them and went to Texas. So I knew they were manipulating every process in the state of Nevada. Nobody was helping me. They weren't following the laws. So this time I went out of state and I found an expert, and he was court certified, board certified, testified in over 200 cases that are all valid cases. Nothing's been overturned. And he confirms again, my signature was forged. So I come back ecstatic, and I'm telling my attorneys, I got a letter from an expert. And they then completely stop all communications with me. They won't help me. They won't talk to me. And now they are still filing in on my cases, trying to push settlements. And with attorneys on your case, you can't retain new counsel. New counsel can't even look at your case until they get off of your case. So they remained on all three of my cases until almost August of 2020 and did absolutely nothing to help me. So during May and August, I began studying the law and trying to file anything to show the judge. At first, I didn't know the judge was part of it. So I'm filing motion for reconsideration, showing her the letter from the expert, the text messages, all the evidence that they took out. And from May to October, Rena Hughes refuses to hear anything. And I'm then writing to Supreme Court now, because if they haven't issued a decree, there's a law that states you could write to the Supreme Court and have them intervene. So I'm writing, and I get Christina Pickering, this judge, and she says, oh no, you're fine, Rena Hughes will handle it. So now it's been 5 months where she's ignored everything. My attorneys are not being reprimanded for legal malpractice. I then report them again to the state bar, and I tell the state bar everything that's happened. They, the next day, close out the complaint. So I then file judicial review against the state bar, and I then report this all to the Attorney General. Attorney General opens a complaint and basically just ignores it. I then go back to the Secretary of State and say, hey, there was 2 notaries and their neighbors. And she says, oh, well, we can't file any more complaints. So I filed judicial review on the Attorney General and on the Secretary of State. So now I have the 2 cases that my attorneys filed, the divorce. I then now have 2 judicial reviews. Well, the judicial reviews, they go to 2 more judges. They dismiss them. They review nothing. And then now I'm filing into the real estate agent case of defamation and saying, hey, I need to amend this complaint because these aren't the right causes of action, and my damages aren't being listed right. And that Judge Mary Kay Holthus says, refuse the leave to amend. You can't amend anything. And you're accusing Linda Naw of fraud, but really it was Nikki Bott. So there is some defamation here. So she refuses to follow the law, even though I then file summary judgment and tell her, look, she uttered a forged deed to be true for 2 years. And she's also using the same attorney as Bobby Antee. And you just saw the corruption of my attorneys, which means this whole case should be thrown out and I should be given a new trial or a new hearing. So after these hearings, she realized I'm recording them. She refuses to hear them and refuses to amend the complaint. So I then file into this other case with the notary that my lawyers filed negligence, and I do the same thing. I need a leave to amend. There's no crimes on property listed here, so the damages aren't correct. And there's many more defendants that were at this closing, and I need to add them. So that judge, Elizabeth Gonzalez, laughs at me and says, oh, we're amending nothing. And then rules in favor of the notary that forged my name with no hearing, no trial, no witnesses, and no jury, and awards her attorney $10,000. And this is where the nightmare began, because I then filed an appeal into the divorce hearing, and I did everything right. So then they kept sending it back to Rena Hughes. So instead of the Supreme Court intervening when they saw the legal malpractice, they saw the mortgage fraud, they saw the abuse, Christina Pickering, Supreme Court Justice, began protecting Rena Hughes and all the government workers that I had already reported this to that refused to do their jobs. And now I had a clear understanding of what has happened to me, that my name was forged, that they're uttering a forged deed to be true, that he lied on loan paperwork, that they committed wire fraud by wiring the money out of my account, that they were all guilty of forgery, and that my true entitlement was the quiet title of the house. And in order for me to quiet the title of the house, I would have to file lease pendants. So that's what I did. On August 3rd, I went down to the county recorder's office and I filed for lease pendants on my house, which tells them there's going to be civil litigation over this house, so you can't do anything with the title. So once I go in there, I had already reported all this to the county recorder, Debbie Conway. And through email, she tells me, oh, the deeds look valid, even though she sees two notaries. The escrow agent is the notary, and they're next door neighbors. And I gave her all the evidence of Bobby saying he didn't know, and the audio file. I gave her everything. So she then begins to conspire to conceal this. And so on August 3rd, 2020, I go into the county recorder's office. I file for lease pendants, and then I asked to talk to Debbie Conway. So she actually talked to me, and we go back into this room, and I tell her, look, here's the evidence. How can you not revoke this deed? Because in the law, it says you can revoke the deeds. This is very clear. The escrow agent can't collect the commission and forge my name. She didn't turn in the journal. He admitted I wasn't there. This is simple. She then tells me that the deeds look fine, and that if I don't leave her office, she's going to call the police for me threatening a government worker. And at this point, I'm completely thrown back, because this is now a Black woman that I'm sitting in front of, and I'm telling her very clearly what's happened to me and the evidence. And her response was, I'm going to put you in jail if you don't leave. So she then has me escorted out by two big guys, and then calls Rena Hughes and tells her that I came down there to file these pendants. So that was August 3rd. And I have that whole conversation on recording. So I will upload that again. I don't think I can upload it to Facebook because they've deleted it, but I can upload it to my YouTube channel, and you can hear the whole conversation on August 3rd, 2020 with me and the county recorder and her concealing this fraud. So then once they figured out that I learned that I was entitled to the whole entire house without having to pay off any of it, and I filed these pendants, Rena Hughes then comes out with her final decree of divorce. So on 8/5, even though she received a letter from an expert in May of 2020, in August of 2020, she leaves everything the exact same in her ruling, and not only leaves it the same, awards Bobby's attorneys $20,000 from me to cover those fees, and then my attorneys another $20,000 for covering the trial. So now she refuses to hear the evidence, and they're now threatening me through sanctions and judgments and giving them to everybody. So their message to me was, if you keep fighting for this, we're going to make sure that that money that you were supposed to get back, you'll never see it again. And for me, I didn't care. I didn't care because I knew I was right. I knew I had evidence, and I thought there was going to be a judge that was going to be honest. So I then filed for quiet title, which is what I was entitled to in the proper courts, and I put the proper causes of action, and I listed everyone. And I added Shumway Van, Jennings and Fulton, Lipson Nelson, the police department, the county recorder. Everybody who I had reported this to who concealed it was on this complaint. So therefore, even though there was already a conflict of interest with the representation of Bobby Antee and Linda Naw, they were now being sued by me, but still today are able to represent both clients and continue and harass me through endless litigation. So I'm going to end this part for now, and I will start part 4, where I will go over what has happened since I filed quiet title. And I pray that my story is helping somebody else, and that some kind of change comes from the pain and abuse that I've gone through now for 4 years. And my goal is, I just want my name back. I want an annulment. I want my name changed back. I want to be able to go buy my own home. And I want to be cleared of all of the defamation that they have caused me over the last 4 years to try to conceal this. And in 2021, we should not ever be put through something like this to conceal a crime. And the people that are helping them conceal it are the people that are supposed to protect us, the judges, the police departments. And for me, I've never had encounters with the court systems or police. I've never had. So to be thrown into it and then see the corruption that has come from a 60-day marriage to cover up, what's been done to me, it's hurtful, because I don't know why I don't matter. I don't know why everything that they've done to me is okay, when legally everyone says it's not. And I wish I could sit here and be like, well, they should make laws against this. We already have laws. We have constitutional laws that under the color of law, no government official can violate the federal constitutional rights of any American citizen. But there's not one person who upholds those laws. And then you file into court systems where you're filing with another judge that is not going to expose the 15 friends under them that have already committed misconduct. And it's a broken system, destroying our community and destroying our families. So I ask you guys to tune in to part 4. And if you want to see any of the evidence on each part that I am sharing, you can log on to Facebook, Equality and Justice, or at This Mama Fights. And I will put all the evidence of everything that I'm saying, because this case should have never went to trial. I should have got a prosecuting attorney that would have done all of this for me. But because the people who have done this to me had all connections to the LDS church, to judges, lawyers, and there is no equality. There is no justice in our justice system right now. If they can do something like this to a person that's completely innocent, and watch me pour my heart into giving back for years why they did this to me, and have absolutely no remorse and no fear at all of being held accountable for their actions, even though the law states that they should be. So I ask you guys, continue to tune in as I get through telling this story. I plan on doing it in 3 parts, but unfortunately it's a lot harder than what I thought to tell the story by myself. And so that's why I'm trying to break it up into smaller parts. So tune in for the next part, where I will go over what has happened since I filed quiet title and the abuse that I'm still suffering.